You know, that we've had kind of a nothing sort of atmosphere politically, and I think that's affected art greatly. I really believe that.
You think your music was political, or the movement of the times was political?
I think it was.
New romanticism?
It was sexually political.
Meaning that you did what you wanted?
No, that we expressed our sexuality openly.
But that's not political in a sense,
oh, it is.
It?
Yes, it is. If you're gay, it's very political.
But it was just doing what you wanted to do.
That's like saying being proud of being black isn't political. Of course it's political, because we live in a world that is hugely homophobic and racist, and is still as racist and homophobic as it ever was. Just because you see a few more homosexuals on TV doesn't mean people are more accepting. So I don't buy that at all.
But you weren't openly gay, at least to start with, were you?
I've been openly gay since I was 15.
But I mean, you've said...
Publicly, when I started my band, I came out to my parents when I was 15 years old. I never, ever, privately denied my sexuality.
Privately, not, but
privately,
you did in public.
Which is the most important thing as far as I'm concerned.
But publicly you did?
For a while, yeah.
For business reasons, or...?
Well, yeah, because the world wasn't as accepting to people being honest about their sexuality at that time. And, I'd really wanted to be a successful singer. So the last thing I wanted to do was add my sexuality to the sort of, to the project, because I thought people would tear me apart.
Until you got to #1, and then you could be as outrageous as you wanted.
Absolutely. Then I said, right, now I've got the money, and now I'm going to tell you I'm queer. Yes.
And was that a relief?
I think for me, I just got frustrated of sort of lying about what I was. Because, I've always been very flamboyant and open about it in private, and there was a certain amount of frustration in having to... I think it was quite obvious to everyone that I was gay anyway, so, those that wanted to know knew, and those that didn't. I think in Britain particularly, there is this attitude of, like, spare us the details. We don't mind people being camp or gay. I mean, we've had a history of it. Danny LaRue, was, the nation's favourite for many, many years, even when I was a child. But, what people want to do is put you in a box, a fluffy box marked inoffensive. So you can be camp and you can be gay, but just don't, go into the detail, the nitty-gritty. Don't tell us what you do in your bedroom.
And Taboo, the name of the club, and now the name of the musical, was really flaunting it, wasn't it, to a certain extent?
I think that over the last kind of 15 years, I think that, gay people have, I think, decided to be more vocal about their sexuality. Because, when heterosexuals think of gay people, they only think of them in terms of what they do sexually. They don't think about them having lives, or cats, or dogs, or families, or godchildren, or, parents. They just think about what we get up to in bed. And I think that, for me, is the big standoff between gay and straight culture.
Who were the people who went to Club Taboo in the early 80s?
They were people from suburbia who came from dysfunctional families, with aggressive fathers and loving mothers who didn't fit into their environment, came to the big city. It's very Dick Whittington, to search for fame and fortune and to create an alternative family.
You said the costumes were like a barrier.
Absolutely, armour.
Barrier what, against the rest of the world?
Well,
against the world outside?
Well, I think, if I go back to, for me, if I go back to school, from about the age of 6, I was being called names. I was being called puff, woman, girly, from a really early age, before I even knew what it meant. So other people were telling me what my problem was long before I actually discovered what it was. So I grew up with that, and I think as a child you can either conform and, disappear, sort of become one of the gang, learn to play football. I tried all that. I wasn't any good at it. So at a certain point I thought, OK, I'm going to have to be who I am.
Did you resent the treatment you got at school?
I hated school.
Do you still resent it?
Yes.
When you look back?
Yep. And I've been invited back to my school many times over the last 10 years.
And you've never gone?
No, because I think if I had to
sour grapes?
I think if I had to go through those gates, I'd vomit.
That bad?
School, I say in my book, school was like a backstreet abortion. It happened and I wish it never did. And I mean that still to this day.
You've said somewhere that the people who went to the club were really trying to change the world in a way.
Well, it was...
They weren't, were they? They were just dressing up.
No, they were trying to change their world.
Their own particular world.
Yeah.
So it was pretty selfish, wasn't it?
Isn't life selfish for a lot of people?
Yes, but it wasn't a political movement to go out and make things better in Africa or
Well, I mean, I think that...
Bosnia or somewhere like that, was it?
No, but I think sexual politics are important if you are a gay man or a lesbian. They're hugely important to you.
They're introverted.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they look in on themselves. They're not looking out
but you're
to
also
the rest
saying,
of the world.
you're also what you're doing, you know, by dressing up is actually sticking two fingers up to people and saying, look at me, deal with it. You know, when I get into a lift with a bunch of businessmen dressed like this, believe me, the atmosphere changes.
You feel you're
Yeah,
making a statement to them.
No, I feel I can feel their terror, and I can feel that, you know, you just, I live with it every day of my life.
Enjoy it?
Love it. Absolutely love it. Because I think that I think we're all a multitude of sexual possibilities. And I think therein lies the fear. I think that's why people get so terrified. Because they're looking at something that is part of them.
Do you think there's a sense in which you do look back on that period with rose-tinted spectacles?
Not at all. The musical is very self-depreciating. We send everyone up, including myself. It is not at all rose-tinted. It's very... I think it's very honest.
Is it a time warp, in a sense? Because there's nothing like Taboo now, is there?
No, I think that, you know, gay culture has kind of really lost its sense of its own history.
Well, it's mainstream.
A lot of gay people think
Isn't
that gay culture started with Carly's Bottom, you know. And they don't realise that there were people like Quentin Crisp and Oscar Wilde. They don't have any sense of their history anymore. And in a way, what we're trying to do is kind of say, look how your freedom was won.
And what's the response?
So far, so good. Fabulous review today in the Telegraph. Very happy.
But the gay clubs are no longer different. You're no longer... You're part of the establishment, in a way.
Am I?
Aren't you?
I've never been to your house for tea.
There are probably plenty of houses you haven't been to for tea. But there are probably plenty, as you say, you get invited back to your school, don't you?
I've never been, though.
No, that's your choice. But the invitation's there. You're not an outsider anymore, are you?
Oh, absolutely. What you're talking about, of course I am.
Only if you choose to be.
I'm an outsider because I'm a gay man and I'm proud of what I am. And that makes me an outsider. My sexuality is... It goes before me everywhere I go.
Hasn't society moved on from that?
No, not at all.
Do you want it to?
Absolutely, I'd love it to, but it's not going to happen in my lifetime. You know, school, if you go to any school now, you know, 13-year-old kids are no more accepting or understanding of sexuality than they were in the 70s or the 60s. It's the terrifying experience to be a gay man or a gay kid living in Bolton or, you know, the Highlands of Scotland. Just because, you know, London or, you know, is more accepting or certain cities are accepting, it doesn't mean the rest of the country or the rest of the world is more understanding.
And